What's up, folks? This is Tony Brewer. You're listening to or watching, as the case may be, Cogitations. Cogitations is the podcast where we think about things, we contemplate them, we turn them over in our minds, and we discuss them. Daniel chapter 7, verse 28, Daniel writes, "Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, my countenance changed in me. But I kept the matter in my heart." Now, we're not going to keep the matter in our heart. We're going to talk about it. Today, we're going to talk about sowing and reaping. It's a wonderful passage of scripture from Galatians chapter 6. And yeah, let me go get my trusty, rusty e-sword. And I can quote this, but I'd rather get it right, or to make sure I get it right. So here it is. Here's the verse that we're going to talk about today. "Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, and he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. And let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap, if we faint not. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good to all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith." As our audience is building on Rumble and Facebook and such, we'll see what we've got going on. We got YouTube building for us, and y'all, we're going to have to fight back to claim a little bit of clout in the algorithm again. It may be a minute before we get back to where we were. Also, if you're listening to this, I really hope the sound. I have a direct box that I use that I don't know if I've got a short. I don't know what's going on, but it's not good. So I've had to use something that I don't normally use. That being said, we're gonna soldier on. Um, I'm going to put up in the chat our logo. Whenever this is there, that means I cannot see your comments. I'm going to go to the notes that I have for the show, and then we'll get started writing them. And if you're coming in, if you're listening to this or watching this on Rumble, be sure to follow us on Rumble. Christianity Now streams on Rumble. We have 28 followers. Well, actually 29 if you count the overall brand. It's kind of confusing. But that being said, we would love for everybody to follow us on Rumble. Once we get 100 subscribers on Rumble or 100 followers, we will be eligible for the monetization. They've already monetized us a little bit. It's very, very small, but once we get 100 subscribers, we get kicked up, I think, get a little bit more visibility. And from my understanding, that's whenever you get into the ad sharing, the revenue sharing with Rumble that is so hard to get on YouTube. Anyway, let's talk about the law of sowing and reaping. It doesn't miss. This is not anything we can change. We cannot mock God. As sure as the sun's going to come up in the morning, the law of sowing and reaping will continue. So there are laws built into the world that do not bend to our emotions or expectations. Gravity doesn't care if we trip. Death does not wait until we are ready. The law of sowing and reaping is just as absolute, and it never misses. Galatians chapter 6, verse 7, Paul wrote, "Be not deceived. God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." This isn't metaphor. It isn't exaggeration. It isn't hyperbole. It's divine truth rooted in the order of creation. Paul's words in this verse reveal 6 truths that comfort our lives and our choices. In full transparency, the first time I heard this broken down in this way, it was 5 facts, and it was Thomas B. Warren. You can probably still find that lecture on YouTube. Anyway, so let's get right into it. I'm gonna share with you 6 truths that confront our lives and our choices. Number 1, we have to come to terms with the truth that we can be deceived. Paul begins the warning with "be not deceived." The implication there Deception is possible, and quite frankly, it's even common. James chapter 1, verse 22 warns us not to be hearers only, but doers of the word, deceiving your own selves. We are capable of self-deception when we ignore the truth about our condition. That chapter there in James talks about, likes a person who's a hearer of the word but not a doer, is somebody that has a confrontation with the truth and doesn't change his life accordingly. So we can justify sin, we can minimize compromise, we can tell ourselves we are doing well. And we can do this all while sowing to the flesh. But the law of sowing and reaping still works, regardless of our self-perception. So we can be deceived. Number 2, we cannot mock God. Again, Paul says God is not mocked. But we cannot treat God with contempt or disregard and expect to escape consequence. History gives examples: Pharaoh, Nadab and Abihu, and others who challenged God's authority and paid dearly, mocking God. It includes attempting to override his design and acting, well, quite frankly, acting as if we can sow sin and harvest blessings. So there's 2 ways to really interpret this verse, and I think both of them are built in. So you cannot, be not deceived. You cannot show contempt for God. You cannot write God off, and you cannot nana boo-boo to God and say, I'm going to live how I'm going to live, and think you're going to get away with the consequences. You're going to get away with it and not have to suffer the consequences of your actions. And I think the entailment of mocking God in that way, Paul says you can't mock him. In other words, you're not God. You can't sow one thing and reap another. God can manipulate the laws of the cosmos because God is the lawmaker. God set this up. In the beginning, seed and harvest are after their kind. You don't plant watermelon seed and get squash. You don't plant corn and get an oak tree, because the seed produces after its own kind. You cannot be a mock God. You cannot manipulate this reality in the cosmos to the point where you can sow to the flesh and not have that seed produce after its own kind. You cannot sow to the flesh and reap blessings. You cannot sow to the spirit and reap cursings. Genesis 1:1 teaches that every seed brings forth after its kind. 1:11, I should say. Again, this principle holds true in nature and morality. We cannot sow to the flesh and reap eternal life. To think otherwise is to mock God or to set ourselves up as a mock God, and God will not be mocked. It's impossible. So number 3, we are always sowing. Some believe they are safe by doing nothing. But Jesus says in Matthew chapter 12, verse 30, he that is not with me is against me. There is no neutral ground in spiritual matters. I think about Matthew chapter 6. Lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust doth corrupt and where thieves do break through and steal, but rather lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, where thieves do not break through and steal. For where a man's treasure is, there his heart will be also. And then Jesus talks about, if thine eye be single, the body's full of light. But if your eye is evil, then the body's full of darkness, and how great the darkness thereof. The Greek word for single there gives the idea of something that is unplaited. In other words, you take your braided hair and you've got 3 or 4 strands that you've braided. Well, it's hard to follow the original strand it's hard to follow one of those strands from the end all the way back up to the source without getting lost. In order to simplify the process, in order to uncomplicate things, you have to untangle or unbraid, unplait the hair. So if our eye is single, that means we're focused. We're focused on one thing. We're not entangled. We're not wrapped up in something. So if my treasure is in heaven, I'm focused on heaven. I'm sowing to heaven. There's no 2 ways about it. We're always sowing. We're always laying treasure. We cannot serve both God and mammon. We have to serve one or the other. There's no neutral ground in spiritual matters. Romans 6:16 says we are always yielding either to sin unto death or obedience unto righteousness. Every thought, word, and action is a seed sown. We are always planting. The only question is, what are we growing? So that leads us to fact or truth number 4. We cannot sow to both fields. If we sow to the flesh, we reap corruption. If we sow to the spirit, we reap life everlasting. That's simple. That doesn't hardly require any commentary. Romans 8:6. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. There is no middle ground, and there's no way to sow to both fields. We cannot live double lives and expect a single good harvest. We must follow the one we feed. We have no choice to follow the one we feed. It's kind of like that old adage from the Native Americans. There's two wolves inside of you. One is vengeful and hateful and murderous, and the other is a protector and content and peaceable. Dangerous still, but all the things that you would want. And, well, how do you know which wolf you're going to be? Well, how do you know which wolf is going to win and win out? Well, the one that you feed. You can't sow to both fields. You can't feed both wolves. Number 5, we must not grow weary. We can't use tiredness and weariness as an excuse not to participate. We're going to participate, and we're either going to do well or going to do not well. Go back to Genesis chapter 4. Cain had a visit from God. Why are you wroth, and why is your countenance fallen? If thou doest well, will it not be accepted of thee? And if thou doest not well, then sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. In other words, if you don't do well, you're going to enter into a copulative relationship with sin, the progeny of which is death and destruction and chaos. So just do well. You cannot sow to the spirit and sow to the flesh. And it requires endurance. We cannot be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. The idea is you have to engage and do something to sow to the spirit, but you can be listless and lazy and froward, listing lazily to and fro down the broad path that leads to destruction. And that's easy. But if you want to sow to the spirit and reap life everlasting, you must not grow weary, because we can fail. You see, that's a conditional promise. If we faint not, the harvest comes later, not immediately, but the delay tests our resolve. 2 Thessalonians 3:13 reminds the brethren, be not weary in well doing again. Paul evidently had an issue with being weary in well doing. He was probably feeling stretched pretty thin. I have the same feeling. I feel like that hobbit. He said he feels like jam scraped over too much bread. I'm like, yeah, oh boy, I feel that. I feel like my soul is thin. I'm not long for this earth. I'm not going to do anything crazy, but what I mean, I'm just not interested in doing things that really prolongs my time here. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to take care of myself. I want to be here as long as I can for my children, my adult children at this point, my future grandchildren, my wife. But I don't know how violently I'm going to fight to remain in this realm, if you catch my meaning. So I understand the weariness, but we need that reminder that we're going to faint, or that we could faint, and that if we just keep going and sowing to the spirit, we're going to reap that life everlasting. We're going to reap those blessings. And then finally, number 6, we will reap more than we sow. And I think that's the beautiful promise here. How can you keep sowing when you can barely put one foot in front of the other and just keep walking in faith? Well, the harvest is always greater than the seed. A single seed of corn can produce hundreds of kernels. It depends on the breed, but I think between 800 and 1,500 kernels is what I found on Google. I did some of that deep scholarly academic research. But I mean, you don't need me to fact check that on Google. Just go get an ear of corn from the grocery store and count the kernels, and understand that one ear of corn came from one kernel of corn. So it's a multiplicative. It multiplies. It's exponentially multiplied in some cases. And I've been told by people I trust that sometimes whenever you have an ear of corn, a stalk of corn rather, it can have two ears. I always thought it was just one ear per stalk. Anyway, and if you have questions, comments, observations, be sure and put them in the comment section and we'll get to them in just a moment. Also, be sure and follow us on Rumble, Christianity Now Streams, or subscribe to YouTube. But if you're watching this on Facebook, just follow me. And we'll see. I've got over 3,000 followers on Facebook now. It's crazy. I never thought I'd grow that big on my personal profile. But they've monetized my personal profile, so that's nuts to me. But go to my personal profile and interact with everything. We'd love to have it. So a single seed of corn can produce hundreds of kernels. The harvest is always greater than the seed. That means our reward for our labor will always be exponentially greater than our labor. So Hosea 8:7 says, they have sown the wind and they shall reap the whirlwind. So it multiplies the other way, just like it multiplies the good way. Sin multiplies destruction far beyond the original act. But righteousness multiplies blessings as well. One act of faith, one prayer, one word of truth, God can multiply that. We always reap more than we sow. Remember, Apollos watered, Paul planted, Apollos watered, and God gave the increase, and the increase was exponential. So our culture pretends that these truths don't exist. They believe that these truths are not true. We live in a world that wants to believe we can sow lust and reap love. It wants to believe we can sow rebellion and reap peace. It wants to believe that we can sow selfishness and reap unity. But the Word of God, the real world, says otherwise. We cannot defy God's moral law and walk away unscathed. Even if you're not interested in being a covenant child of God, if you violate God's moral law in the world, you'll not be upright before your fellow man and you'll be ostracized. You'll suffer the same curse of Cain. You'll be a vagabond. The earth won't lend her strength, and you'll end up being alive because of the charity of others. That was Cain's curse. So we cannot defy God's moral law and walk away unscathed, even in this world, but especially in the world to come, in eternity. So we are watching the results of a culture that mocks God and reaps the whirlwind. Look at all of the political unrest. Look at all of the cultural unrest in the West around sexuality. This is the reason. This is the reaping, the whirlwind of the seeds of Marxist feminist ideology that took root a century ago. So the harvest is coming. We do not get to choose whether we sow or not. We're going to be sowing. We're already sowing. What we choose is what and where we sow. The harvest is guaranteed. If we sow to the flesh, we're going to reap corruption multiplied. If we sow to the Spirit, we're going to reap life everlasting and a harvest beyond anything we could earn. So let us not deceive ourselves. Let us not pretend we're the exception. Let us not grow tired of doing what is right. The law of sowing and reaping does not miss. So we must choose our field. We must choose our seed because the harvest is coming. All right. Now let's see what we've got here. Good to see everybody. I hope something I've said helps you along on your journey to eternity. Harold Jordan, it's good to see you. Good morning, Brother Tony. Glad to see you back. Well, thank you, Mike Osnes. It's good to see you, George Williams. Hello, Terry Crooks. Good morning to you. And hello, Go Trap, Jason Go Trap. Good morning to you. Hello, everyone. I was once suffering from cancer for years, and I was told by the doctor there's no possible cure. Interesting. Interesting. We're not going to do that. I do not like that. You got yourself added to a block list and restream chat. All right. Listen, we don't want to offer, well, anyway, we don't want to use the chat to just sell stuff. In fact, if you're doing something and you want to plug, I would love for you to do that. Like if you have some kind of page or ministry or whatever, put it on there. In fact, the Christianity Now, let me go up here and put this now. The Christianity Now Facebook group is doing really well. It's pretty active, and I'm so happy that some of our listeners post in there very, very often. I think we've got some crazy stuff that floats around in there, and I'm thankful to our listeners for being active in that group because they mitigate that somewhat. And the purpose for the Christianity Now Facebook group is to build a funnel of people that are interested in hearing Christian content. Incidentally, we have somebody watching on Rumble that's not me. Awesome. So the last live stream we did on Rumble got 30 or so views after the fact. I thought that was amazing. Hopefully this is being broadcast in stereo, and I won't have to scrap this live stream and re-upload it after I edit it. But I'm willing to do that to get the sound the way it needs to be. But anyway, let me get back to where am I at? So yeah, the Christianity Now Facebook group, I don't want you to advertise medicine or products in there, but if you have a ministry, if you have a page where you do stuff, share it to that group. And the people that interact with it, invite them to follow what you do. That's what we're building the group for. I want that group to just go crazy and scale. And it takes a little bit, but in a few years, that group will be over 1 million followers if we just leave it alone a little bit, but we cultivate it some. And incidentally, if you're wanting to move up into some kind of role that helps me manage that group, send me a private message or send me an email to christianityisnow@gmail.com. And remember to follow us on Rumble. And here's the email for show topics and questions. Send an email to christianityisnow@gmail.com. All right, I want to get this. Hello, Robert Leeds. Good to see you, man. This is from Gold Trap. Sadly, many churches have lots of land with nothing growing on it. One of the biggest expenses of an American congregation in 2025 is lawn care. I wish we could use that land to grow food. I didn't grow up on a farm. Sowing and harvest to me are just ideas. It would benefit everyone and see it in practical use. Yeah, that's having a community garden and stuff like that would be really good. It would be a really good thing for a congregation to have. And then never stop sowing the seeds. You may not see the results in your lifetime, but the Lord of the harvest is watching. Absolutely. Well, folks, it looks like we don't have any questions, comments, or observations left. I'm so glad that you decided to tune in. And yeah, for those of you that's watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed. But if you really want to be able to catch the live streams and stuff, if you follow us on Rumble, Christianity Now Streams, you will, and you hit the notification bell, you will be notified whenever we upload a video and whenever we go live. And that's more than I can say for any other platform that we're on. So, folks, I believe we'll end it early today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Consider supporting us. There's ways to support us. I haven't been putting the ways to support us in the show notes. I guess I need to start doing that again. But Yeah, you can do it through, Patreon at Christianity Now, www.patreon.com/Christianity Now. You can do it for as little as $1 a month. You can go to Substack, and you can support us on Substack at $5 a month. You'll get access to all the articles behind the paywall. I need to start putting content behind the paywall so we can actually grow a monetary subscriber base over there. I just have a weird it just feels weird to write an article like that or put out a piece of content that I feel I'm putting it out because I feel it's profitable and would help somebody, and then I limit its reach behind a paywall. So I don't know. Maybe I need to get better with that. But anyhow, there's ways to support us. If you want to do it, you can find them. They'll be in the show notes. I need to get back into that habit. But other than that, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook. That's it. God bless every one of you. This has been Tony Brewer with Cogitations, and we'll catch you